Welcome to the next episode, everybody. Take a look. It's the 5.8. Now, if you remember from the prior episode, we had issues starting this guy. That starter would just click, and we were not able to get this thing to even kind of turn over. So, in testing, I found that those two batteries bonded together are from 2017, and no, they've never been officially used before because they were brand new at the time that they were installed. But unfortunately, over the years, it's been 5 years, they've since deteriorated to the point where they're not working. So I picked up an AGM. You can see here, it's not a marine AGM, but it does have similar cranking amps. And I was told it has enough cranking amps to start over this motor to get it to crank over. So, you know, we'll give that a test here in a minute. But you can see I've got the ground and positive hooked up. There are a few other leads that are not hooked up. And I added a common ground over there in the back. You can kind of see it through the wires. Added that so I didn't have to have multiple grounds going to this battery. And let's take a look. Oh, another thing to mention too is you probably saw a different fuel rail at the during the prior episode. That one, when I was looking at it, the fitting on it was definitely kind of questionable. It looked like it was leaking. So we went and replaced that. Otherwise, filled it up with some 93 octane. So we've got that ready to rock and roll. One thing you want to do, obviously, is check the oil and make sure it's on the proper level here. And let's see if I can get the camera to focus. I know it's kind of neat, right? This oil is so new, courtesy of Amsoil, that it barely even shows up. You can see kind of a little red hue on that. All right, let's go ahead and put this back in. Let's also check our hydraulic fluid here, and that looks good. Yeah, you'll see a little bit of water right there, and it's not fuel, just in case you all are wondering. It rained recently here, and the cover blew off, so that's really what that is. Now, another thing to mention here, as you can see, we've got the bilge pump hooked up down there. That is wired to a switch up front. I'm pretty sure I thought I talked about that as well. And then we've got the blower hooked up on this side to make it safe. There are two. One that's on that side over there, and then one over on the back side. So definitely made sure those are hooked up. We just got to get the switch going. So before we, obviously cover this entire area, we'll need to do that. And you may recognize what that is. That's our timing light. I just want to make sure the distributor here is set up in the right location. And then what we're not going to do on this video is we're not going to mess with the ESA. I've got a video series on how to set up the ESA. So if you're curious on, how the overstroke and the interrupt work, I've got I think it's 5 maybe more episodes on how to do this. Works out pretty good. And then over here, this is for our trim sender gauge. Let's walk up here, and you'll see that's what's going to be hooked up for this guy. And we've got the wiring over here. We've got a little piece of tape, covering it. So I don't expect this one to work. Our miles per hour, you can see this one's kind of bumped up a little bit. That's kind of neat. And then we've got oil pressure. So this fuel is not hooked up, but the temperature is. So as it is right now with the wiring, when we do crank this over, we should have temp, voltage, oil, and RPMs, because those wires are still integrated down here. We didn't mess with any of those. And then obviously we won't have our miles per hour sending unit. Looking up here, you can see we have no seats. Those have all been removed. So we will need to rebuild the seats. And then our ski locker, that obviously is missing the cover. And then we've got these little pads for our seats. We will need to likely clean this up a little bit. Some of the epoxy looks like it's kind of flaking off. That may be gel coat, but that looks like that's flaking off here. But the fiberglass in general looks good. Talked about the speakers, and then there is an amp down here. But take a look at all that rust. Let's go on this side here. So I'll have to look. I'll probably pull those wires out and see if they're all rusted. But you can see they're all routed in the back. So I imagine as long as they're routed up high, they should be all right. But that amp, I'm pretty sure is not going to work. And then these speakers, probably blown, but we'll test that. That's going to be low on the list here. But eventually I would like to see if we can attach some seats here. And then looking back in here, the ski locker, kind of interesting back there. And then let's take a peek up front. So everything looks like it's in decent shape. It sounds solid. And that's another thing to mention too with this boat. It sounds pretty solid. Have you ever walked on a floor that was, you know, compromised on a boat? You can tell pretty quick. Now the one thing, like I said, to mention here is this epoxy's flaking, or maybe gel coat, but we'll need to clean that up. I've got the grinder. I do have a little bit of delam right here, delamination happening. So I will take, I've got the Glastron series. If you haven't seen that, take a look. I'll put a link up in the top right hand corner. Take a look at it. And we're actually going over fiberglass right now, so I'll probably bring some glass in and sand this area off to make sure it's not affecting anything in this little raised area or under the subfloor here. So we'll need to come back and take a closer look on that. So that's on my to-do list. All right, so anyway, going back to the motor, we are running, as you saw, the 30 weight break-in oil. We are not running any of this synthetic 10W30 yet. If you saw the other red boat rebuild, we do have that Amsoil in it, but for this one, just the regular break-in oil. We have new 93 octane. You can see here I put in kind of a different style fuel filter. It kind of looks reusable, and I believe it is. Leave some comments in the comments field below if you have one like that. I believe you just separate the two pieces and maybe change out some O-rings. Pretty sure that's all it is, but otherwise everything else is ready to go. The manufacturer in most cases say, and at least in the book, right, when you first start these motors up, you want to run them at about 1500 RPMs. At least that's what I was informed to do in that book right there. 1500 RPMs, and just make sure you got fresh fuel in here, which we do. We'll crank it over a little bit. You do see here that I've got this moving counterclockwise. That's for a different video we're going to talk about later, but disregard that because the motor actually turns clockwise. Just in case you were wondering what that is, that'll be another video. It's gonna be a fun video, by the way, so stay tuned for that one. But yeah, otherwise it's looking good. We do have ESA hooked up, so I don't think we're gonna test the ESA system at all. I'm pretty sure we're just gonna run this for about an hour. I won't keep the video going that long, so I'll probably cut it once we crank this thing over, make sure that it's running, and then we'll power it off after about an hour of running it, and we'll do another video shortly after that. But yeah, cap and rotor are good. Got that loosened up so we can kind of adjust the timing. We've got our timing light over here, so I think it's time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's crank this guy over, this motor. Let's see if it turns over. I know a lot of people have been wondering, does this thing even run? It's been sitting for so long, as we talked about earlier in the series. So check the oil, checked all the gas and everything, as you saw in the prior episode. We've got our Amsoil break-in oil in there. Let's crank this thing over and see what happens. Before you crank this thing up, obviously you want to have water in here, but this gimbal bearing was something that I kind of forgot about, right? So I put about 4 or 5 squirts of marine grade grease in there, because as this motor turns, even though I'm not going to be engaging the outboard motor here, or the stern drive rather, we definitely are going to have the gimbal bearing moving. So I went and greased that ahead of time. So I got water in here now. I'm going to go ahead and start working on cranking this guy over now. Should hear water turning on momentarily. And let's go ahead and put on our timing light. Kind of important. And we'll see how close the timing is, at least at idle. All right, so we got this guy set up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Amsoil. Let's go ahead and crank this guy over. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this video. Like I said, we got a few more things we got to do. Check the oils. I'm also going to check the water, make sure we didn't pick up any excess water. Like I said, it did recently rain here, so check that water separator and go through, make sure all of our hoses are still tight. I know I wasn't leaking any water, as I mentioned, in the exhaust risers, so those were good. Didn't see anything spewing from the bottom. The gimbal bearing, I did walk out there and take a look. That seemed like it was going good. The rear of the motor was cycling all the water through it, so we know the impeller was working great. Overall, I have nothing but good things to say about this motor. So far, I'd almost go as far as saying, let's put a prop on this and go take it out, but you can see our obvious problem here is we got no seats, and I don't think we would make it very far sliding it back on this thing and not being able to sit anywhere, but we'll get there. I'm gonna try to speed through this, you know, moving forward, and hopefully we can get this thing out on the water this year, maybe. We'll see how it goes. Many thanks to Amsoil as well for providing the break-in oil and our marine oil for pretty much every boat that we have out here. Hit that subscribe button, like the video if you thought it was helpful. Leave some comments in the comments field. You know I like to reply. Look in the comments of the prior episodes. You can see I get to those as soon as I can. And stay tuned to the next episode where we kind of go over what the point of that mark is. It's kind of a neat episode. So anyway, let's go ahead and call this video good, and we will catch you on the next episode. Have a good one, everybody. Take it easy.